Yesterday, we got our first official look at Madden 21 on next gen. We got a gameplay trailer, we got some info on EA's website, mostly centered around gameplay. But what's interesting is that's not all of the info that was actually released yesterday. EA themselves did not put out all of the info. There were certain things that were left out of the trailer, which is kind of weird to me. There were things that weren't even discussed on their own website, but rather some of the media outlets actually covered these other differences of the game in depth, and I wanted to make sure to go over that with you guys because, as always, I want to make sure you guys are up to date on every single thing and not just half of the information. I want to make sure you guys know everything that's going on. So if you are new to the channel and you never want to miss out on any of the Madden news, specifically more next-gen news that could potentially be coming as we lead up to the release on December 4th, including actual in-game gameplay that we should get soon, make sure to subscribe, turn the bell icon on so that you don't miss any of those videos. You know, less than half of you that watch the videos are subscribed. That's kind of wild. You watch the videos, might as well just go ahead, hit the subscribe button, turn those noties on, and that way you know that you're never going to miss out on anything. Or don't. I mean, really, it's up to you at the end of the day. But let's get into the article that Operation Sports put out. They really broke down a lot of the extra details that EA themselves, just for whatever reason, I guess maybe they left it up to Operation Sports to cover that, and they just covered the other side of things. But it's interesting, Operation Sports actually starts off their article talking about NBA 2K, basically saying, to see evidence of next gen being done correctly, look no further than 2K Sports and, NBA 2K. While some may disagree with the overall quality of the game, next gen 2K21 feels mostly like a new experience with new camera angles, refreshed game modes, incredibly detailed arenas, and player movement that feels fluid and lifelike. And that's basically what we expect from EA and Madden going to next gen. Now, they did show a little bit of that yesterday, but they didn't really show all of that. They actually left a lot of us feeling like, is this it? Is there any more? This doesn't feel like enough. If you want to see what was covered yesterday, mostly the gameplay stuff and just the trailer itself, if you missed it, the link is below in the pinned comment if you want to get caught up on that. But we still left yesterday kind of feeling like, man, there should have been some more. So the first thing that Operation Sports does cover is the next-gen controls. This is something I've gone over in previous video about the controller haptics, but they go a little bit more in depth with it. And it says here that when they attended the virtual event for Madden 21, one of the big themes was allowing the player to see and feel what playing Madden 21 is like as a next-gen experience, and it starts with the utilization of the PlayStation 5 controller. It says, for starters, controller haptics on the DualSense wireless controller for the PlayStation 5 means you can sense the pressure of an oncoming blitz, attempting a game-winning field goal, and the impact of a perfectly timed hit stick. The ability of the PlayStation 5 controller also varies based on the NFL player. This means if you have a scoop and score with a 285-pound defensive lineman, the trigger will be harder to push and maintain, meaning like the speed boost and things like that. It'll be harder to push and maintain than, say, breaking a touchdown run to the outside with a speedy running back. This also means that with the PlayStation 5 controller and the 48 kHz speaker, footsteps can be heard, audibles can be called out and heard, and the cadence of your quarterback calling out commands to the offense can be heard. While harnessing and making use of the full power of the PlayStation 5 controller may seem like a small detail, it's part of why we brought these consoles. The small moments of an NFL game are things that often go unnoticed, but adding little touches like what I mentioned above are what helps drive a new and authentic experience on the gridiron. We have things like QB calls into the microphone before on the Nintendo Wii, or the rumble that signifies a heartbeat of a field goal on old controllers. What is here is another level beyond that, both in clarity and feel. So yes, we have had this before. We've had controllers rumbling. This isn't new, but it's basically just taking it to another level. And like I've said in past videos, this is going to be a much bigger deal for PlayStation 5 than for the Xbox, because PlayStation 5 kind of went a little bit further with their controller haptics, and specifically when they talk about the weight and size of certain players, or certain interactions. If you're like trying to break out of a gang tackle or something, it's going to be noticeably harder to, push down like the turbo buttons or the joysticks. They can like program more resistance into them for situations where in real life there would be more resistance. So I do think that part is pretty interesting. Personally, I play on Xbox currently, so I won't experience that. But if you are a PlayStation player, I think it gives you a little bit more incentive than an Xbox player for the next gen version. Next, they talk about feeling the power. It says one of the most exciting parts about owning and playing games on PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X is simply the power of each system, and EA is aware of that. For next-gen Madden 21, that means blazing fast load times. Stadium intros will be much faster, MUT loading times are heavily decreased, and game load times are seamless and get the user into the action without losing the excitement or focus. I mean, that we'll kind of just skip over the rest of that because that's expected. We already knew that was going to be a thing. Now let's get into one of the biggest things they covered, which is sidelines, the sideline cohesiveness, because yesterday, probably the biggest complaint I saw was, why do the sidelines still look the same? It's one of the things we all talked about. They always said, you know, they didn't have enough memory. They were kind of maxed out. That's why the sidelines for the last 2 generations have been like PlayStation 1 sidelines. They didn't have real players, real player bodies, names even on the jerseys. It was disgusting to look at, especially for a game made in 2020. And we knew going to next gen that excuse wasn't there. The power was like never before. That should be one of the first things they upgraded. But yet in the trailer, still the same dead sidelines. However, I was shocked by that because I had already known that sidelines were being updated. Like that was a thing. But they didn't display it in the trailer. And I was like, that's interesting. But when you look at the Operation Sports article, they go in depth about it. Now, why this wasn't on display in the trailer, you know, that beats me. That just seems like a complete goof on EA, you know, old capture maybe. I don't know. To me, there's kind of no excuse for that. You should want to show off the sidelines if they're new because so many people have been fed up with them. But anyway, that's a little mini rant. Here's what Operation Sports had to say. This is a big deal, and I feel good about calling this one of the bigger improvements coming to next-gen Madden 21. One of the biggest complaints about PlayStation 3 and 4 and Xbox 360 and Xbox One cycles, outside of gameplay and franchise mode, was the lack of realistic sideline presentation in Madden. EA did try to hype up living sidelines on the PS4 and Xbox One X, but it never really came together and matched up with what we see on TV. That looks to be changing with the release of Madden 21 Next Gen. How? It's simple. In the previous versions of the Madden HD era, the sidelines have been porous at best, and the players and the details that were represented digitally lacked detail and quite simply made no sense. In addition to the lack of depth and detail on the sidelines, fictional players were often seen, and the graphical quality of the players standing there was almost comical. While this was never, having an impact on what was taking place on the field, it always had a disturbing effect on the level of immersion for me. On top of that, some of us at Operation Sports like to play from the broadcast cam, and the unrealistic sidelines are one of the few things that really drag down the experience from a realism and graphics perspective. This is all about to change with next gen, as now you will see an accurate and realistic number of players waiting their turn to hit the field, and if the offense is in action, you will see your team's defense and backups realistically depicted on the sidelines. Not only will all the real starters and backups be seen roaming the white stripe, but you will also see some with eyes on the field, some will be watching game replays on devices, and some will be huddled together talking. To go even deeper into detail, along with the real players in greater detail, you will see sideline equipment that matches what you see in real game. There are benches for sitting, tables for stretching, players moving independent of each other, and different types of personnel now roaming the sidelines. However, no, I have not heard anything about real assistant coaches being added here as of now. So that is really a very important bit of information. We know that there are going to be real players on the sideline. You're going to have your offense on the sideline when defense is on the field, and vice versa. You're going to see the backups, but not only just seeing real players with real bodies on the sideline, that alone, laughably is such a huge step up for Madden, but they're going to be doing different things. Some will be huddled together, some will be watching the action on the field, some will be looking at replays, which is, more like what you would see in the NFL. Not every single person on the sideline is doing the same thing. Now, why that wasn't shown in the trailer, I just couldn't tell you. To me, that's just such a drop of the ball. Like, if you knew you were upgrading the sidelines, why capture old sidelines in the trailer? It doesn't make sense to me. But hearing that, I think that at least will eliminate that one complaint for a lot of people. At least that has been fixed, because really, sadly, that's like bare minimum that should be fixed at this point. Next, let's talk about the weather effects. It says here, unlike most sports in the US, football is being played in the snow, rain, sun, and wind, and unless the weather is extremely dangerous, the show must go on. While the developers at EA have done a solid of delivering realistic weather impacts over the years, with the new generation of systems comes a new set of user expectation. And next-gen Madden 21 users will now see snow realistically gathering on the field and on the sidelines. The game also delivers rain in a way that will see it collect and form on the field and sidelines and saturate players' uniforms and beat up on players' helmets. During the presentation, there were a lot of scenes that displayed the new weather effects in game. All of them looked great. Still though, it must be seen over the course of a full game to know if the impact and visual immersion is truly at the level EA claims. And you can see a good example of Tua Tagovailoa. Again, small things, but when Madden has been lacking this for so long, it is something you do like to see, but it's not going to make a huge impact on the game, but it's what you like to see. You could see the rain beating up on Tua's helmet. You could see it, kind of sprinkled on the top of his jersey, whereas like in current Madden, you don't really see any of those real weather effects. Now, how it's going to actually affect the in-game on-field play, I mean, that's kind of a big part of it. We'll have to see if it does or if it doesn't. The next is deferred lighting and rendering. It says most of you are probably asking yourself, what the heck is deferred lighting and rendering? And don't feel bad, as I was in the same position myself. DLR for short is the ability to put more light resources in places, and that is the backbone of delivering a rich, detailed, and authentic looking stadium and player models. It all comes down to the power of each new console, and EA has tried to deliver with that power. Now players should see organic looking day-to-day night transitions. I saw this in real time and it looked as good as I hoped it would. While the player scans that EA already used were mostly very good, the new DLR system will allow the player to be more detailed, including better skin texture and reflections from in-stadium objects and on the player helmets. It is important to remember that in football there are many factors during a game that require different types of lighting, whether it be the day or night, time of year, indoor, outdoor, sunny, or with precipitation, and all of that will factor into what lighting seems natural, and the new DLR system helps deliver that look in a realistic fashion that's available today. So that is good. That's something that a big part when you have like those games that start in the day and they end at night. That transition is important. Obviously, the lighting's just going to make the players look better. We've already seen a lot of screenshots and we've seen footage. They do look better. It's expected. And that's really where a lot of the next gen's going. The lighting is really what's taking things up the next level, not so much just the graphics themselves getting better, So the stadiums and the players and the environments are going to look more real, but again, that was expected. Now, they also touched on the next-gen player movement, but we went over that yesterday. That was basically what all of yesterday's video was about. But what was important is, there were other clips that they didn't show that I thought really would have been good to see in the trailer, and this is a specific one where you see Davante Adams, on current gen versus next gen and how the route is different. I'll actually let the developer actually speak about this because he kind of explains it in a better way, and then I'll be right back.
Now let's talk about route running specifically. In addition to speed and acceleration rates, our animation engine is also leveraging player-specific route paths from next-gen stats for receivers. In many cases, elite receivers will run their actual routes tracked by next-gen stats' real NFL game data. For example, the actual route that you would see from Green Bay Packers wide receiver Davante Adams on a deep crossing route on a Sunday will be the same route reflected by Adams in Madden NFL gameplay. And the result is natural feeling fluid routes with athletic nuance and player differentiation, all possible thanks to the incorporation of next-gen stats, which no other sports game has. And now we can take a closer look as we go to the next video. So here what we're looking at is the difference between current gen and next gen. As you can see on the left, on current gen, our route running and movement was very robotic. Players accelerated instantaneously with multiple destinations existing on a single route. And that comes through in its robotic nature. And on the right, on next gen, we're using actual NFL player data from next gen stats, and they run an entire route from start to finish. So you can really see the difference in the quality of motion in terms of how receivers get off the line and then run the route. It's smoother, more athletic, and more realistic.
So as you can see, I mean, clearly that's a very small sample. We saw a lot of route running in the trailer yesterday, but this is a good example side by side of just how the route running is less robotic. The player movement is a little less robotic, but my question is this going to be more so, is it just going to be routes? Is it going to be ball carries in the open field as well, turning up field with more momentum and not just kind of robotically changing direction? All of that matters. The defensive players, they talked about it in the trailer that they would react and kind of be more fluid, but there are little clips in the trailer where you see see kind of background players that still are kind of doing the same weird stuff that they do on the older version of the game. But again, the trailer also shows the old sidelines and stuff like that, so it's like I don't even know what to believe and what not to believe at this point. However, the route running and player movement does look better, which I think that's probably the biggest and most important step that we've seen so far. Also, even in this side-by-side, you can see that just the jerseys and stuff like that, it looks a little bit better on Davante Adams. It looks less painted on. It looks more like a real fluid jersey like you would see on a player in real life. It looks more lifelike. The textures are better. So I mean, a lot of that again was expected, but that's pretty much it for today's video. I wanted to make sure I cover this article, specifically going over the sidelines, because I did see so many people upset about that yesterday. It seems like the sidelines should be upgraded. For whatever reason, EA just chose not to show it, and I don't understand it either. But hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I will see you guys next time.